This is Plant-Based Briefing. How is natural killer cell function boosted by forest bathing? By Michael Greger, MD at nutritionfacts.org. And I'm Marian Erickson. This is the curated content plant-based podcast where I narrate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living in about 10 minutes or less every weekday with permission. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. How is natural killer cell function boosted by forest bathing? By Michael Greger, MD at nutritionfacts.org. Studies on the effects of forest bathing, a traditional practice characterized by visiting a forest and breathing its air, have found it can induce a significant increase in the number and activity of natural killer cells, or NK cells, that can last as long as a month. And because natural killer cells are one of the ways our body fights cancer by killing off tumor cells, the findings suggest that visiting forest parks may have a preventive effect on cancer generation and progression. How? Why did the forest environment increase human NK activity? What kind of factors in the forest environment activated human NK cells? What is it about the forest environment? One thought is that the boost may be related to a reduction in stress. If you measure the amount of adrenaline flowing through people's systems, did spending time in a forest but not in a city lower adrenaline levels? Yes, as you can see in the graph below. However, if you drip some adrenaline on human blood cells in a petri dish, there does not appear to be any effect on NK cells. The stress hormone cortisol, on the other hand, dramatically suppresses natural killer cell activity. So, might being in the forest lead to less stress and less cortisol, which releases the natural killer cells under its thumb, giving us a boost. We know being surrounded by nature can decrease levels of cortisol in our saliva, but what about our bloodstream? Researchers found a significant drop in the stress hormone after a single-day trip to the forest. A week later, cortisol was normalizing, but the forest effects sometimes appeared to last an entire month. Anything else that could cause a longer-term immune system change? Maybe we've been missing some of our old friends. If you sample outdoor air, you can pick up an abundance of microorganisms from the soil and water that float around, but are absent in indoor air. Indoor air is dominated by organisms that either live on us or try to attack us. So, on a day-to-day basis, in terms of keeping our immune system on ready alert, it might not be sufficient to encounter only the biased microbiota of the modern synthetic indoor environment that lacks some of the old friends and probably bears little resemblance to the microbiota we encountered throughout our evolutionary history, the microbes we evolved to live with over millions of years. Or perhaps it's the plants themselves. Maybe it's the aroma of the forest. Trees produce aromatic volatile compounds called phytoncides like pinene, which we can breathe into our lungs when we're in the forest. Do these compounds actually get into our bloodstream? Indeed, after spending 1 hour in the woods, we get about a 6-fold increase in pinene levels circulating throughout our system. To fully connect all the dots, phytoncides like pinene, those essential oils from wood, would then have to induce human natural killer cell activity. And guess what? Phytoncides, wood essential oils, do induce human natural killer cell activity. If you put natural killer cells in a petri dish with leukemia cells, our NK cells can wipe out some of the cancer cells. But if you add a whiff of cypress, white cedar, eucalyptus, or pine, the cancer cells don't stand a chance. A study showed that a combination of wood aromas improved the recovery of mice put through the ringer, but this is the study I was looking for: effect of phytoncide from trees on human natural killer cell function. If we want to know if the magic ingredient is the fragrance of the forest, then let's see if we can get that same boost in natural killer cell activity by just vaporizing some essential oil from one of the trees into a hotel room overnight. It worked. There was a significant boost in natural killer cell activity. Only NK activity was boosted, though, rather than the number of the natural killer cells, and being in an actual forest can elevate both. So perhaps it's a combination of the tree fragrance and the lower cortisol levels working together. Ironically, these phytoncide compounds are part of the tree's own immune system, which we may be able to commandeer. Researchers speculate that these compounds may be playing a role in the fact that more heavily forested regions in Japan appear to have lower death rates from breast cancer and prostate cancer. Indeed, being in nature has been found to be an important coping strategy among cancer patients, but it may help us to cope better thanks to the fragrance of trees. In summary, 1. Spending time in a forest significantly increases NK cell activity, which plays a role in cancer prevention, and the boost may last up to a month. 2. Time in nature reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, which otherwise suppresses NK cell activity. In this way, our immune system can get a boost. 3. Forest air contains diverse microorganisms absent indoors, potentially enhancing immune readiness by exposing us to old friends from our evolutionary past. 4. Forests release phytoncides like pinene, which, once inhaled, can increase NK cell activity, which is involved in cancer cell elimination. And 5. Both the scent of trees and reduced stress appear to enhance immune function, with heavily forested regions linked to lower cancer death rates in Japan. You just listened to How is Natural Killer Cell Function Boosted by Forest Bathing by Michael Greger, MD at nutritionfacts.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson. And I thought this was fascinating. It just reinforces the benefits of holism versus reductionism, not only with nutrition, but with lifestyle. I personally easily experience a reduction in stress by being in a forest, even by looking at my wallpaper. My computer wallpaper is a forest, and I just feel, when I look at it, it's so calming. But to know that it actually improves our immune system and increases the cancer-killing cells, that's amazing. I'm going to make sure I get out into nature, into forests more often. I've been thinking about where can I go walk through a forest nearby, and thankfully there are options, so I'm looking forward to that. And the benefits of being in nature, walking in a forest, also reminded me of the history of EMDR therapy, which is used often for the treatment of trauma or PTSD. And the story resonated with me that just walking in a forest can have such beneficial effects that it's become a common therapy. But essentially, EMDR therapy was developed in 1987 after Francine Shapiro was walking in a park and realized that the negative emotions associated with her traumatic memories were decreasing, and she realized it wasn't just the stress and cortisol levels decreasing. She assumed it was eye movements, because as you're walking, you have to be looking back and forth, especially, in a forest wooded area. You have to be looking back and forth along the ground pretty quickly with your eyes to make sure you're not tripping over things. So she experimented with eye movements and found they did have a desensitizing effect, and found that others also had the same response. She eventually developed this into the standard procedure called EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Total tangent there, but just the whole forest thing made me think of that story, which always stuck with me. So, schedule some time for monthly forest bathing, and please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.